The SPFL season is finally over. All the leagues, playoffs and cups are done, which means it's time to look back on the predictions I made at the beginning of the season and see just how right, or wrong, mainly wrong, I was about the season just been. Unlike the prediction video where I went in depth club by club, I'm just going to cover the league as a whole and give a quick overview on each club's season, just to save time as otherwise this video would take ages. So, let's see how badly I did that. We'll start off with the winners of the Highland and Lowland Leagues, where I put Bucky Thistle to win the Highland League and East Kilbride to win the Lowland League. As I'm sure you're aware of by now, East Kilbride won the Lowland League and the playoffs to enter the SPFL at the 4th attempt. But it wasn't Bucky they faced off against. Brora were the winners of the Highland League, finishing ahead of Brecon on goal difference. Meanwhile, Bucky finished 7th, 24 points behind. Not a great start, is it? Moving over to League 2 now, and this is where I'll show you the actual league table before revealing what I predicted. As we can see, Peterhead won the league ahead of East Fife, Edinburgh City and Elgin finished in the playoffs ahead of Spartans and Stirling, Clyde, Stranraer and Forfar are towards the bottom end, but Bonnyrigg were the ones who finished bottom and were ultimately relegated by East Kilbride. For my predictions, however, I got that Edinburgh City one very wrong, didn't I? And Elgin, actually. For Bonnyrigg, if you remove their points deduction, they do finish 8th, but obviously I can't claim that as some sort of moral victory over the decision makers at the SPFL, can I? When it came to Forfar, I seemingly overestimated the abilities of Ray McKinnon, as when he got sacked in February, they were well adrift at the bottom. Stranraer are about where I expected. Clyde were huge underachievers, and they eventually got a video made of them back in January or February, around that time. Stirling were in a playoff hunt but fell away at the end. Spartans were the same. Elgin were in a title fight for the first half of the season, so fair play to them for proving me wrong. Edinburgh City were powered by Connor Young, where he had a near goal per game record before being signed by Dunfermline in January, but they still remained in the playoff spots after his departure, so fair play to them, especially Michael McIndoe. East Fife, meanwhile, came close, but a loss to Peterhead on the penultimate day handed their rivals a title, but they would still earn promotion through the playoffs, beating Annan, and as mentioned, Peterhead managed to win the title to earn promotion back up to League 1. League 1, meanwhile, and this division was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? Dumbarton finished bottom with no small part due to a 15-point deduction for entering administration. Annan finished 9th and, as mentioned, lost to East Fife in the playoffs. Montrose finished way down in 8th with Inverness just above them, who also had a 15-point deduction. Kelty finished 6th but were in the playoffs until the managerial merry-go-round struck them hard. Alloa missed out on the playoffs on the final day, being leapfrogged by newly promoted Stenhousemuir. Queen of the South had a strong end to the season to finish 3rd. Cove finished 2nd, but were defeated by Airdrie in the playoff final, whilst Arbroath managed to recover from a poor start to win the league. Over to my predictions then, and oh wow, I got 3 bang on. Dumbarton had went up through the playoffs and I predicted them to finish bottom, but not in the manner they did, with administration playing a big part in it as mentioned. Don't worry, there will be a video eventually on them. With 9th spot, I was constantly changing between Kelty and Stenny, but they defied my expectations for the most part, although if Charlie Mulgrew was in charge for the whole season at Kelty, I might have got this one right as well. Annan were just poor throughout the season, same could be said of Montrose. Inverness, my favourite League 1 club to make content on, had an interesting season. Don't worry, another video is in the works, but without their 15-point deduction, and Duncan Ferguson, they would have finished 2nd, but they're down in 7th instead. As mentioned with Kelty, a very messy managerial situation with Michael Tidser leaving for Dunfermline, Charlie Mulgrew coming in, then leaving after about 10 games or something like that, where he was terrible. Alloa were in the playoff spots going into the final day, but lost to Kelty on the final day, which saw them get leapfrogged by Stenny, who managed to make the promotion playoffs instead of the relegation playoff like I predicted. Queen of the South, meanwhile, finished 3rd, which I predicted. Cove finished 2nd, which I didn't expect considering they lost Roman Burrow, who was their main outlet in the previous season. And Arbroath won the league as expected, but they did it after sacking Jim McIntyre, who was terrible, replacing him with David Gold and Colin Hamilton, who worked as a player-manager duo, which will be interesting to see in the Championship. Speaking of the Championship, That was certainly an eventful league this season. Hamilton Accies finished bottom following a 15-point deduction for a whole bunch of shenanigans that led to a 25-minute video being made on them. Airdrie were rock bottom but saved by Accies' misfortune. Queen's Park and Dunfermline finished just above them. Moulton finished 6th, as we really should have seen coming. Reef missed out on the playoffs on the final day to Partick Thistle. Ayr finished 3rd after a strong start to the season, whilst Falkirk would do just enough to beat Livingston to the title. So, the Championship is arguably the league I have the best knowledge of. It's the one I do a podcast on nearly every week, so surely this one I will have done well in, right? Oh god. Accies, as mentioned, got a huge points deduction to do with not paying players and stadium issues. Again, I made a video on them recently, so you can watch that for more info. Airdrie had a Brecon-esque start to the season. They were on 6 points going into the new year. Nobody could have predicted that. When they got their injured players back, a form table for 2025 shows they were a mid-table side, but tables are done over 36 games, not 18. They did manage to win the playoffs to stay in the division, which, considering they were, again, on 6 points at Christmas, is a good achievement for them. Queen's Park, meanwhile, are a complete mess, and will be getting a video made on them at some point as well, I reckon. Especially with the club putting an update video where they reveal their budget is being slashed from £5.7 million to £1 million. Yes, you heard me right. They spent £5.7 million in the Championship and finished 8th. Dunfermline, meanwhile, were just bad. They scored 28 goals in 36 matches, the 4th worst attack in Scotland. And I mean Scotland, by the way. All 290 clubs that are in the pyramid. Cruden Bay, BSC Glasgow and Thurso were the only teams to have a worse goals per game record. Their shenanigans with McPake, then Tidser, then Neil Lennon were a right laugh to watch, along with the signing of Victor Wanyama, who on his debut got sent off 20 minutes after coming on. In a normal season, Dunfermline get relegated. But this is the Championship, where there is no such thing as a normal season. Morton, meanwhile, finished 6th, which is something I really should have predicted, as they seemingly always find a way to finish either 6th or 5th. Reef, meanwhile, finished 5th after sacking Ian Murray after one league game, getting cucked by David Healy, hiring Neil Collins, who went to America for Christmas, before bringing in Barry Robson in January. Robson nearly got us to the playoffs, but our terrible start to the season is what ultimately cost us a chance at promotion. I sure hope I didn't say anything embarrassing in my original predictions. Reef arguably have the best squad in the Championship, and I'm confident that we will be seeing Premiership football at Starks Park for 2025-26. Partick Thistle, meanwhile, got into the playoffs by not being as bad as everyone below them. They would sack Doolan, with his replacement till the end of the season being Brian Graham, who became the busiest man in football, seeing as he was now player-manager for the men's team, whilst being manager of the women's team. They would almost blow the playoffs, getting 1 out of a possible 9 points in a 3-game period against Accies, Airdrie and Dunfermline, but then would finish the season with wins against Falkirk and Livingston to make the playoffs. They just had to give me hope, didn't they? The playoffs would see them beat Ayr before being comfortably beaten by Livingston. Could that not have happened on the final day? Ayr, meanwhile, were very much in a title challenge and were top at points as late as January, but seemingly collapsed towards the end, with Scott Brown's side being knocked out at the quarter-final stage of the playoffs by a Brian Graham last-minute winner. Livingston, meanwhile, were just consistently getting the results needed to maintain a title challenge, but silly losses here and there were what ultimately meant they lost out. They would, however, beat Thistle and Ross County to earn promotion through the playoffs. Falkirk, meanwhile, surpassed everyone's expectations and achieved back-to-back title wins to see them return to the Premiership for the first time in 15 years, despite trying their best to throw it away at the end. Over to the Premiership now, where the top end and bottom end went as expected, but it was the middle where things were interesting. St Johnstone finished bottom with Ross County finishing 11th, again. Dundee dropped down to 10th behind Kilmarnock and Motherwell. Hearts finished in 7th after dropping out of the top 6 just before the split. 6th would be taken by St Mirren, with Aberdeen, Dundee United and Hibs getting the European spots. Rangers were runners-up, with Celtic winning the league. Again. When it comes to predictions, meanwhile, it starts off well before becoming a mess, before ending well, but as mentioned, those 4 weren't exactly difficult decisions. St Johnstone were favourites to go down and were bottom for pretty much the entire season. Ross County finished 11th for the 3rd time in a row, and this time were relegated. I can't wait to go to the Mallard next season. Dundee were certainly the entertainers, but with by far and away the worst defence, it's no surprise they ended up where they did, leading to Tony Docherty getting sacked. Killie just never really got going, with Derek McInnes now leaving the club to go to Hearts. Motherwell saw Kettlewell leave the club, citing abuse towards him and his family for the reasons behind his departure. Michael Wimmer would come in, get Motherwell playing well, before leaving at the end of the season to return to Germany. Hearts had a terrible start, which saw Naismith get sacked, replaced by Neil Critchley, who would later get sacked following failure to get top 6. St Mirren once again finished in the top half, with Stephen Robinson continuing his good work. Aberdeen had an incredible start with talks of a surprise title challenge before being terrible in the second half of the season, but it was worth it in the end for a Scottish Cup win, I suppose. Dundee United returned to Conference League football again. They thought it was Europa League, but Aberdeen's Cup win knocked them down. Don't embarrass yourselves this time, lads. Hibs were rock bottom in November, but an incredible run after a 3-0 draw against Aberdeen saw them finish 3rd. Rangers would finish 2nd as usual at this point, with Celtic winning the league. Shock. So, of 44 predictions, I managed to get 8 correct. Some were close, but overall, there were some absolute howlers in there, especially Edinburgh City. Will I have learnt my lesson to not do this for next season? No, of course not. I will do the same thing for next season. I should probably hold back on Wraith winning the league, however. That went wrong after game 1. That's all for this video, and of course I hope you enjoyed. Did you do your own predictions? How wrong or right did you get them? Let us know in the comments below. This is just a bonus video, don't expect weekly videos. I do have another video up next week, but after that, regular scheduling will resume. As usual, liking, sharing and subscribing are appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.